Thank you, Professor, for enlightening us with your priceless knowledge. The next lecture will be conveyed by Mr. Patrick Sinz, who is the CTO of Apila SA, a product startup focusing on innovative smart cities applications, and the Director of Incubation at Next Gen SAS, focusing on innovative open source projects in the public sector, smart city and sustainable development. He has worked for HP in various functions, and prior to that, he had held a number of general management, CTO, and sales management roles within medium and large corporations. Earlier, he worked on operating system-related projects at the INRIA and the IRCAM. His current interests cover open source solutions for the smart city and mobility sector, and open source collaboration and business models for sustainable development. He has taught operating system design and electronic government at the University of Paris 8 from 1981 to 2004 and holds a DEA of Computer Science specialized in artificial intelligence from Paris. I would now like to take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Patrick to come on stage and share with us his knowledge on making open source work in and for the public sector.
Okay, so how to make Foss work in and for the public sector. If you are standing from the point of view of the Foss community, you obviously think that open source is a way to go for everybody, including the public sector. And since the public sector is somehow your money, you'd really like your money to be used to buy services and to deploy solutions that you appreciate. But if you're standing on the side of the public sector, your role is not to promote the Foss because we are nice people and cool. Your role is to provide service to the citizen, is to make a government that works. So we have to sit together and see from each side what is the best way to move forward. So what are the issues for Foss acceptation in the public sector? The first issue are internal issues in the public sector. When you go meet a stakeholder, the first argument is, why should I care? Which means that you have done your awareness communication before, because it's obvious why you should care. Sovereignty, price, sustainability, but if you have that question, it's too late. I'm not used to, well, it doesn't matter. If you're not used to a nice car, well, you manage to drive a nice car when you get one. We do not have the skill, but on the other hand, the government are continuously training people to grow new skills. You want to develop your people. You don't want to say, okay, you learned to use a typewriter 40 years ago. That's okay. Stay that way until you retire. You train people, you can train them in other things. One very important issue for our government is that they do have prior relationship. If you work well with a provider that's specialized in Oracle financials, and you say, well, go away, I will change everything, it won't be that easy, because there's an investment, there's relationship, and you don't want to change something without obvious benefit. So as a Foss community, we have to promote the benefit and to demonstrate them. So what we don't want to be is like a Don Quixote. You probably have read about the story of the knight that likes to attack windmills. We don't want to be that people. So yes, sovereignty is important. yes, you have to think that if you're scared of your partner, they are not your partners, they are your master, and you have to fight against. A good partner you don't have to be scared of. And if your team doesn't have the skill set, well, train them, and it takes time, you have to plan, that's true. But this is something that you don't say in the context of a project. When the project is starting, it's too late. So as a Foss promoter, you have to think about the driver of the stakeholder, not what you want to achieve, but what they want to achieve. They want to achieve good service. They want to promote tourism in Oman. They want to make sure that oil flows. They want to make sure that the driver's license comes out of in time. They want to emit passport. That's the issues, and you have to demonstrate that you're able to solve those issues. So what you have to do is to look at how you can minimize the risk for stakeholder, demonstrate success, and then success breeds success. So what are the external issues? There are really two major types. One part, the government has partners. And if there would be Foss partner, you wouldn't be having this discussion. So you have to think about the existing partner. How will the relationship between you, the government, and them be in 5 years? What are the steps you have to say? Obviously, if it's case of Microsoft, the steps are pretty clear and a little bit harsh. But if it's a consulting company, it's different. You have to think about this. For new partners, very often the situation is very different. You may have a partner that has a perfect software that does lots of things very right, but they don't have the government-specific knowledge. They don't have the certification, security certifications that you need. So you have to line up all the issues that you can see, all the blockade, all the problems that can arise, and start to work on this, not really on the solution itself, but first on whatever could make your solution not the optimal, not in terms of technical solution, but in terms of relationship. The other thing is that when you want to move from one brand of technology to the other, well, in most cases, it means that you're changing legacy and you will have double billing. And that is a hard sell. In the future, you may have lots of benefit. You may have much lower prices, but in the short term, no, you will pay. And so there's a kind of, there are actually lots of embarrassing examples. One was in France, the French military wanted to change the way they pay people. And they didn't use open source software, but they nevertheless lost almost €500 million. In Omani Real, it's cheaper, but nevertheless, it's a lot of money. And why? It's because it was really a kind of big bang idea. They took 7 years to say, okay, the system we have is on very old computers. It's very hard to maintain. There are a lot of special cases. There was some old military 16-bit computers still being used to buy some stuff. It was a nightmare. So we start from zero, we rebuild everything, and after 7 years, well, we find out that it doesn't work, that there are too many special cases, that it's too hard to rebuild all the past undocumented knowledge that was embedded in the existing system. So they scratched it. And by the way, last week came out that they did exactly the same for the civilian part. It's very hard to rebuild from scratch a total system. And the main issue is that the data they had were in very different format. And they said, okay, we will have new data in a nice format. It doesn't work that way. The first thing you want to do is to think, how can I have an interface that translates old data, legacy data, in new data? And I don't need to translate everything. I need to say, when I need a data about somebody, then I translate that specific data. So for instance, if I have data about veterans 20 years ago, I don't have to take all the special case at once because I probably don't need them ever. If ever I need it, I will worry about it. So you want to have a small step approach and a very data-centric approach. You want to have small wins that can help you learn, demonstrate your capacity. And you don't want to have huge projects that fail. So the basic strategy is remove tendering issues. So for instance, if the plan is to tender for a package, for Foss it's never good because on one hand you say, okay, I will have a package with lots of features, it will be $20 million. And now I want somebody to deliver a service for that package. Of course, when you have people that invest heavily in marketing to sell their package, they will be better armed than Foss community. You want to say, tender should be about projects, and they should be about the smallest projects that can be managed. Then you want to organize collaboration, and one very important thing is collaboration between public entities, and I will speak more about it later. But let's assume, for instance, that you have two resort cities, and they both want to promote their city as a nice place of resort in Oman. You can make plan A, is to say, the government make a site for both cities and promote them. Well, each city knows what's really interesting locally. So they know better than the central government. So it's better to let them do it. So plan B is each city does its thing, but 90% of the platform is the same. So how do you manage a collaboration so that they don't pay 100% each, but maybe they pay 50% together, 50% each, and it's 150% more expensive than it should be. That's still less than 200% more expensive. And it's also more nimble. And then you want to find, as a Foss community member, within the stakeholder, a champion. Somebody that understands the value and that will really be your internal voice, that will explain you the real issues and that will help you to promote and to work through all the steps. And especially one thing we learn in the open source community is that it's very hard to plan a long term ahead. Now, there are certain type of methodology that really were developed in the open source community or the industrial community and then went to the general software community, like agile programming, lean management. And this helps everybody to make programs in a more timely fashion. But really what we learn is that you first do a core, you enhance it, and then you redo many things and you enhance it again, and you don't try to solve all the problems in the world at once. Linux started as a program of about 30,000 lines of code. That was Linux, 0.90, I think. Now it's a couple of millions lines of code. And why? Because you need it to manage all the hardware possible. If Linus Torvald would have thought, okay, let's first look at all the drivers I might need for any machine and handle it at once, it would never have worked. He would have been unable to do it. But he made a small model, demonstrated value, and then people participated. So in order to organize collaboration, you need tools. So how many of you are using GitHub or SourceForge or something similar? Okay, so in the open source community, but also in the closed source community, you need tools to share software and to share version of software. Each time I do some piece of code, I write 100 lines, 200 lines that does something, I send it to a server that will write down the version, and then I will modify it and so on, and I will be able to say, oh, I have a bug, but 2 days ago I didn't have it, I go back to the old version. Or I modify something, you modify something also, but we don't have exactly the same version because you have a copy. But at some point, we merge together and we know exactly what are the differences between what you worked on, what I worked on, and so both our enhancements are put together. This is what does software like Git. You can have your own version on your computer, you can share it on a server, you can go a global server like GitHub, or you can do the things that in France we're doing now since almost 15 years now. The ADUL Act is the association of users of free software in the administration and the territorial communities, which means the public sector, central and local. And they provide a platform to share software, where you can share versions of software, you can write that you have found a bug, you can request a modification, and the owner of the development will say, okay, I will fix it or not, or I will make you a proposal. But all this means that if I'm the mayor of a city and I say, okay, I need a new system to manage my parkings, there already one software on ADUL Act. Maybe it does only 50% of what I need. Maybe it does everything what I need. But I can go there and speak with the people that did it, look at the code, see if it works, ask my IT team if it's compatible with my environment, try to think about it, and then start and then make a tender for the service I really need. I can also look at what's around and see, a system to convey the grade of my students to the teacher. I don't really need it to the parents. I don't absolutely need it, but it would be a nice thing to have. So yes, it's election time soon, so maybe I should do that, or maybe not. So today there's something like 600 projects which are registered, about 9,000 users, and things that each user is typically representing a city, ministry, so it's not 9,000 persons, it's a lot of persons. And they also create subject matter working groups, which means that if you're interested in ID management, if you're interested in public sector accounting, you want to speak with people that speak the same language and they have the same issue, you will not be able to planify a common tender among 10 agencies at the same time. But at least you will be able to see where you can have similar technology, where can you have competing technology, and how you can leverage some of the things that the other are doing. And so this enables agency to softly align the needs and timing. So if you share a forge for the public sector, you share code, versions, documentations, and you have adulac.org. I'm sorry, it's in French. But Google Translate does a very bad work to translate stuff, but you will get the gist. Is the site for the community, and .NET is the site for the forge. And based on this, we went to the EU about now 10 years ago and said we should do this on the EU level and combine with Junta de Extremadura forge, with the Danish forge at that time, and so on. And this at the end finally became JoinUp, which is a platform that's registering about 6,000 projects and I think 20,000 communities Europe-wide. And most of those people are very keen to collaborate internationally. So it's a place to meet people, I would say, that have similar interests, similar issues, and similar technologies. So if you want to move from large project to continuous improvement, and you want to try to make Foss work in the public sector, really the very first element you have to do is focus on open formats. Focus on interoperability. You don't want to force people to own the same version of Word that you do because they download a formula and you have to edit it. You don't want to have users seeing the message, you don't have the right PDF version. And internally, you don't want to have two agencies unable to collaborate because they have different systems and different protocols, and the format of one table in one database is not compatible with the same table in another database. And the guy that made it has disappeared 2 years ago, and you don't know what to do. So once you fix the interoperability issues, actually all the rest is easy. Well, for a very high value of easy, or but nevertheless. The other thing is, if you look at all the data the government generates and use for its own need, but very often doesn't use. For instance, you have commercial data about import-export. You have real estate data about the way the city grows. You have traffic data about why are we waiting for 1 hour to go to the airport to the next point, because there are lots of cars. All those data are data on which you can create services. One of the startups I'm working with, Apila, is using real estate data in Paris and mobility data from the local, from one of the operators to predict where you have the highest chance of finding a parking space in Paris. And if you've ever been to Paris, you know it's a nightmare to find a parking place. But with these two sets of data in a common interoperable format, and it's not that easy, but we've done it, we are able to provide a service that neither the telecom operator, neither the city was really willing or able to provide, but which will provide real service to the citizen. And which will be also slightly well for the planet, because in a city like Paris, 30% of the gasoline is burnt in order to park. I think you have enough gasoline. You don't need to sell us this 30%. So open data is really a way to make public and private sector collaborate in an ethical way. You're not saying the public is guaranteeing the loss of our private sector. It's we have data, you have capacity, you compete on the best use of our data, and if the end user has a benefit, you will make money, and we will have a better service to our community. So the last thing is when you're moving to a Foss solution, you have to remember it's a journey. It's on the long term. It's not, you don't change, even if it seems obvious, you don't change a state, even a small city, infrastructure in a couple of months. You need years of sustained work, and you have to think that every month you do something, it's becoming a little bit better. You are providing better service to your community. You are creating job opportunity for the private sector because you are doing things your way, adapted to your needs. And the city works better, but it will take years, and that's okay. So after that, we have a session. So I tried to be a little bit shorter than my predecessors so that we will be on time, and we will be open for questions. Thank you very much.